So welcome back to Game Dev Trenches. This time we're going to talk about coding versus visual scripting. Let's get started. Do you actually need to learn how to code with an actual language? Technically, no, you don't. You can use visual scripting. I'm a fan of coding, programming. I'm a software engineer by trade. I kind of lean that way when it comes to programming. Now, you don't technically need to know programming. There are plenty of games out there that use visual scripting. Like Choo Choo Charles, for example. I'm pretty sure the creator of that uses just visual scripting to make it. Or he just did to make it. I have more personal experience with programming, with coding languages, and now I'm doing some game dev with that also. When it comes to coding, what are your options? Without getting into too technical details, because I'm not teaching you how to code, or I just want to tell you what your options are out there, I guess. The biggest roadblocks in game development are tutorial hell, game art, and coding. And we've talked about tutorial hell, we've talked about game art, and now we're going to talk about coding. And coding is probably one of the scariest things that people come across when it comes to game dev, because it looks like it's a different language, and it is a different language. Learning to code is like learning a new language, literally learning a new language. It's a coding language. That's why they call it a language. You have to rewire your brain to think differently, to understand it, to read it. Once you learn it, you can look at a script and understand everything on it like that. But to someone who's never been trained in that or skilled, it looks like just a bunch of random letters and numbers thrown together. So I know last time we talked about game art, and some people are really good at game art, but then they might be bad at coding. And then some people are really good at coding, but then they're bad at game art. And in game dev, you need both. So what are your options? Well, when it comes to coding, the language doesn't matter that much, especially if you're using an engine. If you're using an engine, you just use the language that comes with the engine. And you shouldn't really pick an engine based on the language. You can, if you're really good at C++, then use Unreal Engine. If you're good at C#, then Unity is your best option. If you're good at, what does Godot use? They have GDT, and I think you can use C# and C++ in it, I think, maybe, possibly Python. I'm not sure. Haven't used it. But if you're good at whatever language Godot can use besides its native language, then use that. I'm not telling you to use it, but use what you're good at. If you already know language, you got a little step ahead, or you're at an advantage. You can learn C++, C#, basically any language can probably write a game if you have the right libraries and frameworks. But if we're sticking to engines, let's just stick with Unity and Unreal, just for talking points. We don't need to even talk about details that much. So if you were to use coding or start learning coding to make a game, what should you do? I don't believe you should learn all the fundamentals of that language. I don't think you should take C++ courses or C# courses or fill-in-the-blank language courses to get started in game development. If you're trying to just learn that language for other reasons, sure, go do that. But for game dev, you can learn coding as you go. There are options out there. I've seen plenty of Udemy courses where it's learn C++ for game development. And yeah, they're going to teach you things that are tweaked for game development, because there are different things when it comes to game development that the languages use than it comes to just straight hard C++, say. So that can be advantageous, but it's not necessary. You don't need to learn the basics. You don't need to learn what an int32 is, or what a variable is, or what a boolean is. You don't need to study weeks on weeks on weeks in order to start game dev. You should just start and, hit the ground running. And that's just based on my own personal experience. Like I said, I'm a professional software engineer. I do this every single day. So when it comes to coding, you don't need to learn the basics like that. You can learn as you go. And when hard coding, when actually learning a language, it will benefit you in the long run. I believe, at least, it will benefit you by far better than learning visual scripting. And you're saying, well, you already chose us or told us to do this now. Why are we going to talk about visual scripting? It has its benefits. It does. We'll get to that. But learning the code changes how you think. It really makes you really think about the steps, which can be applied to other parts of the game dev, right? Because learning how to code, you have to tell the program every single detail that you want it to do. It's not like walking through your house or walking down the street or walking through a maze where you're making choices that you don't even realize you're making. Your day-to-day activities, you're making choices you don't even realize you're making. But when it comes to game dev, when it comes to programming, when it comes to writing languages or writing code with languages, you have to give the computer, the program, all those details. Every single one, every single step, when to stop, when to turn, when to reverse, conditions, every single detail. Otherwise, it won't work how you think it's going to work. And you get this learning, you change the way your mind works, the way your brain works, the way your thinking works when you learn programming. It does. If you stick with it, it rewires your brain. So that's a benefit. Rewire your brain, and then you're more versatile. If you learn the program, if you learn to code with a language, you can basically tell the engine, tell the game to do anything you want. You're not limited by anything. As long as it's capable in the engine, even if it's not capable in the engine by, like syntax or by built-in functionality, you can always build your own in the language. You can build out your own functions that engine might not have originally been able to do, or that language, and you can build out your own functions or classes or objects or whatever it is. Libraries, frameworks. So that's coding. Say you want to do it, right? Say you want to learn coding. So what should you do to learn it then? I would start making games, right? And we're not talking about game development right now. We're talking about coding and game development, but I'm not telling you how to make games. I'm saying in order to learn coding, you need to put it to practice. So the best way to learn it is by making games. That's a whole different topic. We've talked about that. I'll talk about it again in the future. But if you can just sum that up into that messy, detailed, complex topic of make games, how to make games, and so on, take that, bundle it up, and hold it there for a second and say, if I want to learn to program or learn to code for game development, I need to make games. And then fill it into that bundled up concept of making games or how to make games, okay? So you start small, right? You start with basic functionality. You start with, I want to move my character across the screen, or I want to be able to do WASD and move the character. That's the great place to start. It's probably one of the most essential things to do, right? Whether it's 2D or 3D, get your character to move, get him to jump, add some health system, add a hit system, damage system, so the health can go down, add an attack system, all these things, program all these out. Start simple and work your way up. Try not to overcomplicate it either. When it comes to hard coding and visual scripting, which we'll talk to about more, all your complex systems need to be broken down into smaller systems. That's just how it is. That's how it works in the real world when it comes to software development. That's how it works in game dev. It's no different. You take complex ideas, complex systems, complex functionality, and you break them down into simplified versions. You start with the most basic version of that, like getting the character to move. I know I sound like a broken record, but that's what you do. Get the character to move. And then you add things on top of that. You add health, and you add jumping, and you add rolling and dashing and abilities. But you break everything down into the most basic version. For example, when I was building out a project, when I was learning software development, and I was building out a project for my portfolio to get hired as a software engineer, I built out a social media website. But I did it in stages. I did not just build out a site overnight with all the functionality, creating content, creating posts, creating accounts, adding friends, whatever it is. No, the first thing I did was build a login system. I built it where I want to be able to log into a place. All you had to do, that's what it was, log in. And then profile, and then posting, and then commenting, and then liking, and then syncing everything up or saving in the database. You build on top of it over and over and over. Start small. If you can figure that out, if you can master taking complex systems, complex functionality with coding and break them down into simple versions, you will learn and you will master it. You will be super proficient at it. That's all you got to do. And that's what beginners do. And that's what the most experienced developers in the world do. You all start with complex systems and you break it down into simple systems and then you build on top of it. So that's coding in a nutshell, basically. It seems extremely intimidating. It does. I understand that. When I first started learning software development, I was extremely intimidated. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I built on top of it. I went from web page to social media website over a year, and now I'm a professional software engineer. And the same thing works for game dev. You start small with a character, and by a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, you'll be building things you couldn't even dream of. It just takes time and rigor and grit and consistency. If you want to get good at if you want to get good at programming, I would recommend putting in at least 1 hour a day. Now, that's a minimum. I would do 1 hour a day because it's the consistency that you're going to learn the best from. That's what I did. I'm not going to always talk back to me, but that's what I would do. 1 hour a day for consistency, and you'll learn better and retain the information better. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much the basics of coding. Like I said, we're not going to go into high detail because I'm not teaching you how to program. You can find really good tutorials out there how to learn coding, especially for game development. Right, so we have languages don't really matter. They can all pretty much do what you need to do. Just pick an engine or whatever engine you're using, use the language that's there. So you have the language. It makes you a more versatile developer. It makes you a stronger developer. It makes you... you can do more in your game if you learn how to code. So basically, for strategies to learn, you do 1 hour a day, and you just take complex systems and you break them down into simple systems. That's all you need to do. 1 hour a day, complex systems, simple systems. Have daily tasks. Say, I want to get done with this today. I want to get my character moving today. I want to get my character to jump today. I want to get the enemy moving today. I want to get the enemy's attack working today. I want to get the state machines working today. That's how you succeed. So, on the other hand, you have visual scripting, right? And visual scripting is great. I've used that too. I've built out entire projects in visual scripting. It can be faster, I think, to start and to get something prototyped with visual scripting. But I don't think I would want to, personally, I don't think I'd want to prototype visual scripting if I had a plan to code afterwards. I think I'd want to do one or the other. And if I was going to do a hybrid method, I would just work that in somehow. But I don't think I'd want to prototype with visual scripting and then redo everything in coding. So what are your options for visual scripting? Well, if you're using Unreal, it has it pretty much built in, and they have an extremely well-developed visual scripting system called Blueprints. You can build entire games like that. I'm pretty sure Choo Choo Charles, like I said earlier, was built in Unreal using just visual scripting. So go check that out, that game. I have no affiliation to it, but it's a pretty good game. And it was extremely successful, and it was made just with visual scripting. So it is possible. And if you want to go down the visual scripting route, then you can definitely do it. So the pros of visual scripting, it's way faster, I think, to prototype. I think it's easier to pick up in general. It's easier to understand, I think, overall, kind of, if you know what you're looking for. A lot of times when I was using visual scripting, I would be looking for some functionality, and I would think I'd find it, but the function, the built-in node, the built-in function was kind of slightly different than what I wanted, and there might have been 2 or 3 options, and it took a minute to figure out which one exactly I needed. Now, it was already there, so I didn't have to build it out myself, which is nice. But then you run into cons. Like, I ran into multiple times where I needed to implement something, or I needed to build something out and the functionality just wasn't there, or the node wasn't there, or the mechanic wasn't built into the system already, and I had to kind of design it myself with conditions, right? And that's fine. But that kind of ties me back into coding. I have a mindset now where I can think with conditionals, with if statements, whiles, for loops, stuff like that, functions, objects, but that's because I have a programming background now. If I was going straight into visual scripting without programming knowledge, I think it'd be kind of difficult to do complex systems with it. Personally, that's just what I think. I think it would be complicated to do complex systems with visual scripting with zero prior coding knowledge of any kind. Now, both coding and visual scripting, like I've said over and over, I always sound like a broken record, but I really think you need to hear things multiple times to understand. Both visual scripting and coding are both viable options for game development. 100%. You can make a game in either of them, and you can make a great game in either of them. Don't get me wrong. Me personally, I would do coding. Now, there's times where I get really frustrated with coding and I want to go back to visual scripting, and you can do that actually. You can do a hybrid method. I know especially for Unity, it's super simple because you can use something like Playmaker, or you can use scripts, and you can attach either of them onto your object, or you can attach both of them onto your game object, and they'll both work perfectly fine. I think in Unreal you can do the same thing. You can have C#, C++, or C++ scripts, and you can have Blueprint scripts on it. I think it's a little bit different. I think that's why I didn't like Unreal as much. But that's a different story, a different topic. Now, sometimes when it comes to learning visual scripting, it can be difficult finding help for it. When it comes to Unreal, there's endless amounts of Blueprint coding tutorials out there. I think most of the tutorials are blueprints because I'm pretty sure Unreal's really pushing the blueprint system, which is fine. But when it comes to Unity, most of the tutorials are done with C# and their scripts. But there is an option. If you're using Unity, you can use a plugin or a system, I guess it's a plugin, called Playmaker. In Playmaker, I forget the actual company name. I think it's a Chinese name. They have a YouTube channel, and they have all kinds of tutorials on there on how to use their system, their Playmaker state machine system, and it works great. So that is an option. If you want visual scripting, you have options in other engines. I'm not sure if Godot might have visual scripting. I'm not sure. I haven't used it. You can look into that. But you have options when it comes to coding and visual scripting. The two major engines, Unity and Unreal, can do both, and they both work really well at both, or they both function great with either of the options. I know I didn't go into as much detail for visual scripting, but that's just because I don't have as much experience in it. I've used it, I've built out projects in it, but I'm no expert in it. I'm no expert at it. And I'm no expert at programming either, or coding. You know, there's always better people out there, right, that know more about the topic or the subject. I have experience in both. I do programming every single day. I don't do visual scripting every single day. I have used it in projects, though. So if it was up to me, I like to voice what I would do, not telling you exactly what to do, but if it was up to me, I would do coding from the get-go. But I think if you really don't like coding and you're really on the fence on it and you just can't stand or can't focus, then yeah, you should try visual scripting, or you should try visual scripting and stick with that. Having a more artistic mind, maybe it might work better. You might be able to visualize it better. Now, just like the other topics I've talked about, like the art, game art, there's always going to be camps on either side. There's going to be people on coding that thinks you should do nothing but coding and that's the best thing out there. And there's going to be people on visual scripting camp that thinks there's nothing better than visual scripting and you don't need to learn a code. Neither of them are right. I can tell you that. You can make games on either one of them, right? There are pros and cons for each. When you're looking things up, if you watch other videos besides this or listen to other podcasts besides this, and you're still not sure about it, just keep in mind that you can make a game in coding with hard coding, and you can make a game with visual scripting. Either one's fine. Do whatever's best for you, whatever you gravitate towards, whatever you think is better for you. Now, before we end this, I want to talk about one more topic that's extremely important, I think, at least when it comes to coding, especially with what's been happening in the last few years, and that's AI. Last time we talked about AI art and how it affects game development and if you should use it or not. This time we're going to talk about AI coding. Should you use it? How should you use it? Is it even good to use, right? I recommend using it. I use it. I don't use it to write everything. It's not the best at putting everything together. And then if you're doing that, you're not really developing it yourself. I mean, there's arguments back and forth, but you're not learning that well anyways. And if your goal is to also learn while you're building your games, then you don't want AI writing everything for you. But AI is really good at solving issues. If you have errors, bugs, things you can't figure out, writing basic functions, frameworks, objects, creating classes for you, it's super good at that, and it's only getting better. Unity is working on, I think it's in beta right now, built-in AI for their engine. Unreal's probably working on the same thing. If they don't have it already, I'm not sure. I don't use Unreal. I use Unity. But AI is here to stay. And anyone who's arguing that you shouldn't use AI and you're cheating or you're not a real developer, don't listen to them. In the real world, in the software world, where actual software is being made, programs are being made, AI is a leading industry. It's developers are using it, companies are using it, and if you don't use it, you're going to fall behind. You will. You're going to be that one last developer who thinks that they can hold out and they can stay strong. And not saying you need to give in just to give in to feel weak or to feel like you're pressured, but it's no different from a new technology coming in. It's no different from the smartphone being created, right? I guarantee you there were people holding out when the smartphone was created saying, I'm not going to do that. I need my flip phone. I just text messaging is fine. I have a computer. I don't need a smartphone. Everyone has one now, though, right? Everyone. I mean, it's what our world is. We all have smartphones. It's built into our society now. The same thing's going to be with AI when it comes to game development. It's going to be built into it. Like I said, Unity is building it into their engine. There's going to be a tab right at the beginning. You don't have to go look for it. It's right there. It's going to be built in. And if you're not learning to utilize it, you're going to fall rapidly behind. From a few years ago when AI first was introduced to the public till now, it has drastically improved and just increased and benefited how quickly we can develop things. I've messed around with ChatGPT, I've messed around with Grok, I've messed around with Claude, and I think there's other even built, more detailed ones that are even built in or designed for game development, but those are the three I've used, and they're phenomenal. They are great to use. I think the best one I've seen so far of those three is Claude. I think it gives the best code without errors. I have run into issues I've seen where I run into points, run into credit issues. I run out of credits. I don't really use it anymore. I was just testing the waters out with those three different ones, and what I can see is it's improved a lot, and it's only going to improve, and the rate at which it's going to improve is just going to keep increasing and increasing and increasing. Now, do I agree that games should be made 100% with AI? No, I don't agree with that. I don't think so. Do I think games will one day be made 100% with AI? I don't know about that either. I don't know if that's ever going to be possible. Someone's always going to be prompting it. AI is probably not going to know exactly what you want every single time based on the prompt. I think major parts of the games will be made with AI, whether it's assets or coding. But putting it all together, I don't know. I don't know if the games will. Maybe at one point, I'm sure they'll be made. But will those games be good? I don't know if they'll be good. We'll have to wait and find out. I think games where the developers behind the reins steering it, and just using AI as a tool, because that's what it is, I think those games will be perfectly fine and be good games. I think developers who use AI to build assets that they envision but they can't make themselves, like if you're an artist or if you're a developer and you have zero art skills but want to make a 3D game but you can't make 3D objects, but AI can, then I think that's perfectly fine. Make those 3D objects. It only benefits you, because in the end, the player does not care what's inside the game. They only care if the game works, if the game's good, and if it works, right? So they don't care who made your assets. They don't care who wrote your code, as long as the game is good and as long as it works. So when it comes to back to AI for coding, for game development, I don't know if it's going to progress to always, or to making games completely. I think it's going to be a major part in game development. I think it's going to change how games are made. You're probably going to see a lot of, or even more increase of bad games being made, I would think, which is unfortunate, but I think it'll balance out. I think it will allow the good developers to improve faster, to truly make good games and not be burnt out from all the snags, all the issues that they run into, like art or coding, whatever's a hardship for you. I think it's only going to improve. I think it's going to allow the good developers, the people like you who are trying to actually make good games. I think it will. At first, it will make the. What am I trying to say? At first, I think you'll see a lot of bad things come out, which it probably already is. A lot of bad games being pushed out, a lot of terrible AI games. I think it'll balance out, though. I think in the long run, AI will drastically improve the rate at which good developers can develop games, and those will outshine the poor games being made. I do see an issue possibly with like AAA titles. I know I'm going on like a huge rant here, and we're kind of getting away from the topic, but I kind of see, possibly thinking about it now, we already have an issue with AAA titles not being the best lately, and cutting corners and rushing things. I could see them using AI, thinking about the money, the cash flow, cutting corners, and making even worse games, honestly. It's kind of a crazy thought, but yeah, I think they could do that, which is unfortunate. But I think for indie developers, I think it's going to open up a whole new world, a whole new. I think it's going to blow up. I think the indie developers who learn to use it and use it wisely, I think you're going to see a lot of good games come out. I don't know when. I couldn't say 5 years, 10 years, but I think you'll see a lot of good games come out because of AI, because they learn to use it and use it the right way. I think it's the same way with engines, right? It's the same thing with game engines. Back in the day, game engines didn't exist. You had to hard code everything, right? You had to build everything out on your own. And I guarantee you, when game engines started to come out, I bet there are a lot of people saying it's cheating, it's not real game development. If you're using a game engine, you're not a real game developer. I guarantee you there was a majority or a good amount of people saying that. But in the long run, and I bet there were a lot of bad games that came out. I'm pretty sure Unity had this issue where a lot of people were asset flipping and creating a lot of bad games out there. Man, this is such a side rant, but I'm almost done with it. I'm just kind of enjoying it. And my thought process is flying right now. But back to it, there were a lot of bad games being produced because it was so easy to make games, but it's balancing out again now, where a lot of good games have been coming out of these engines, Unreal, Unity, and stuff. And yeah, a lot of bad games still come out, but I think with AI, the same thing's gonna happen. You have your naysayers, but these people don't see the big picture, I think, and AI's here to stay, and I think it's only going to improve you developers who are trying to actually make good games. So yeah, let's finish this up. Let's get back on topic. Coding. So you can code, you can visual script, either of them. You could probably use AI for visual scripting. I'm not sure. I think I messed around with Unreal, and it wasn't the best at it. But so you can code, you can visual script, either of them are perfectly fine to use when it comes to developing a game. You can make a game either with either one. You can make a game with either one. And there's not really a bad option. I have my personal opinions. Like I said, right now, I think I'd lean towards coding because it's kind of my profession. But I have made games with visual scripting. And in the end, it's up to you. Anyone who says you can't do one or the other is kind of wrong. I might have said that earlier in the video, and I don't think I said you can't. I kind of might have said I recommend, but that's why it's good to have an open mind. I have my own opinions, my own views, and I think you do what's best for you. I have my recommendations. But yeah, just you can code, or you can visual script, and both of them can do games perfectly fine. So if you have any questions or need any assistance or need any help or just want to talk, reach out to me, or you can check out, I have a game dev community called 10th Legion Games. You can check it out. There should be a link in the description. And if you're enjoying the podcast, you can watch us on YouTube or listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Music. I'll see you next time. Thanks.